Well, Spencer, we started off with
Yeah.
a big accident. First of all, I want to know.
How close do I have to be to this?
Oh, sorry. I will just be like a hand length away. Like,
A hand length away. You got
yeah,
it.
pretty much. You can just talk. It's better. Like,
Okay.
yeah. What plant is this?
That is the Latin name I believe is Transgender Nanook. It belongs to the same family as a wandering dude, which is a colloquial term or like street name for it. I brought it because I thought it kind of matched. I thought it complemented the green of your logo here. There's a really nice pink element to it, and also green.
Would it grow in this if I put
Water? It would,
soil and water in it?
yes, it would do quite well. They are
That'd
almost
be
like
pretty
weeds.
Cool.
They grow quite well.
Okay.
And
And then
yeah,
you got me that,
I'd say
which I
water
really appreciate.
like once or twice a week. And I know I asked you earlier, like how often do you water the aloe? You said a month. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, that might be a little bit too in between waterings for this plant, but
Oh,
could
I'll
do it.
water this one more then,
Yeah.
which is no issue. And then this little guy.
Don't
if
know the
anybody's
official name
watching.
of it. Some kind of succulent. It was given to me by a friend that I used to work with in university. Like this gave me the plant the same size as that, and it's just since grown into like hands lengths of multiple plants.
Hmm,
Yeah.
that's pretty
And
cool.
the neat thing about it, so both of these are you can grow them from clippings, so you can share them. Once the Transcantia Nanook Wandering Dude gets longer, just take a pair of scissors. Basically, if you look at the plant, there's these like I call them tiny little hair filaments around the joints or the knuckles of the
Yeah.
plant.
They almost look like a little weld around it.
Yeah, exactly. So when those get those tiny little hair filaments, I think it's at that point ready to be clipped and shared and taken around.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's mature enough to be able to,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
basically strong enough to.
To be transplanted,
Nice.
to be clipped, and to go into new soil.
Yeah, it's kind of coincidence that you gave me these plants because this morning, I do when I'm older. I do a little bit of planning, but when I'm older, I want to have a flower garden.
Mhm.
Like I wanted my own vegetable garden, but I want to have like a flower garden where you just walk in and it's just a room of like basically a wall of flowers where like insects and bugs can just like flourish in.
Yeah.
And it's just walls that they can pollinate in. It's just a huge square basically.
Like
Does
an
it-
indoor
No,
terrarium.
outdoor.
The outdoor
So,
terrarium.
yeah, an outdoor.
Just an ecosystem.
Yeah, literally, and
Yeah.
just like all flowers, and I think it'd be amazing. And I was sketching some ideas this morning.
Oh, that's interesting.
I'm like, maybe I would put some like maybe pathways of flowers, but I want like a kind of a committed room
Yeah.
that you can walk through. But then like when you walk in, there's just like bugs everywhere. It's just like flourishing. It's just like
Yeah.
all committed to them. It's kind of cool.
I like the sound of it for
Yeah.
sure. I have tried having an outdoor garden at home. I'm not very good at it. I much prefer, I think, indoor plants. My room in university, so I graduated from my undergrad a couple years ago. My fourth year was the year the pandemic happened. It was the onset was during that time. So I lived in residence, worked in residence. So one room, quite small, but maybe dozens, maybe hundreds, low hundreds of plants. And the humidity, I like things hot. I like things quite warm. It was like you could swim through the air. I just remember, like, I wasn't paying for the electricity, so I just had the humidifier like plugged in all the time.
Yeah.
I had grow lights, and my plants did very well in that space, and I did very well in that space.
Nice.
Yeah, before having to flee quite quickly. I remember the decision was the 2-year anniversary was quite recently of like the pandemic, COVID-19 coming to New Brunswick, and then everything shutting down. March 13th is 2020 is the day that I remember. That Friday we had a meeting as Residence Life team, and they were like, "We're not telling you that you have to leave, but if you can leave, you should probably really consider going at this point." And I was like, "What?" and then one of the directors of Residence Life, or whatever their title was, they were like, they tried to get our opinion on it as Resident Life staff. Like, so by Monday, do you think like 50% of students will be gone, or like higher or lower than that? And I remember like, what? That's a ridiculous number. But sure enough, by Sunday night, yeah, many people had left. Residence was barren. That's a strange story, and I wasn't intending or planning to like dive right into like
No,
what's up with COVID-19.
there's no plan to this podcast.
There's no plan.
It's just simply a conversation wherever it goes. I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah.
I was gonna mention something while you're talking. Oh, do plants get weaker if they are grown inside than outdoor environment due to like wind and?
Weaker. I have no idea. I'm
It's all good.
I'm not an expert in plants. I just tend to enjoy them.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, certain types of species. The very lay person listening to the podcast, if you're listening, will like they probably know more than I do. Is what I'm trying to say. So certain species will do well indoors. This is a type of plant that'll do well indoors. In tropical climates, like maybe in California, you could grow them outdoors, but here they would not do well outdoors. And there are some species I'm thinking of, like Coileus. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but I have a couple at home, and they grow them outside of like Sully's. It's a very inexpensive and very prosperous plant that can be grown indoors and outdoors. And I think outdoors, it likes to be ruffled by the wind. It expands, it gets bigger, gets kind of more bushier when I bring them indoors. They get like leggy and they grow kind of like almost like a vine, so less bushy, of etc.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question. I don't think I can answer the question.
Yeah, no, that's all good.
Yeah.
I just thought of it, and I just if you had the answer, you had the answer.
So have you tried vegetable gardening yet? Did you mention that you already?
Yes. Yeah. For the past 2 years.
What do you grow?
Just easy stuff like zucchini and green beans and carrots and.
Okay.
We used to do potatoes when we were younger.
Oh wow.
But I don't really remember actually doing it. You know what I mean?
Just bad. So I've like had a garden and I've tried it. I'm just bad at it because I it's hard for me to distinguish. I don't like to weed. I like to plant things and like leave them, and then hopefully something grows from that.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, the garden just becomes overwhelmed with weeds, and then the good things tend to not grow because of it, because space is taken up. I remember, I think this past summer, I planted kale at the first, and then I thought that like there's like a June frost, and I thought that all the seeds died, and I just kind of like let the garden go unkept over the summer, and then like in October or November, like late into the year, all growth should have been dead by then. I found like kale in my garden, and I was like, oh, that's kind of neat, and I wish I had spent more time paying attention to that throughout the year, because I really could have probably nourished it, fostered it, and had enough kale maybe for like a dish at some point. I really enjoy.
Yeah.
I love kale. This is such a boring topic.
Do you love kale?
I like efficient nutrients.
Oh, okay.
And I think
like is spinach considered an efficient nutrients?
I think on a scale of like iceberg lettuce, which might not have that much nutrients, it's mostly water.
Mm-hmm.
Scale is one side, that, and then on the other side is perhaps kale. Maybe there's a better super green that I'm not aware of.
Like avocado.
Oh, I love avocado. I like it a lot. And along with that, I also like the seeds, like germinating those things. I think they're fantastic gifts, and I think a little bit hard to come by. But once you have the process nailed of like how to prepare a seed and germinate it and then like plant it, I think I spent like a year trying to understand the process and trying to like navigate in these unsuccessful ways. Like if you look it up, or if you are curious about it, or if you already have some sort of baseline knowledge, I think the most popular way that people try is a toothpick method, where you stick several toothpicks, or just like 3, around the base and set it over a cup of water, much like this. Tried that for a year, never had any success. Maybe I was just doing something wrong, or the climate wasn't right, because I see pictures and people do have success with it.
And this is for kale?
This is for avocado.
Oh, avocado.
pit,
Okay.
yeah.
Sorry.
No, kale has to be in the ground.
I was gonna say. I was like, what's
this
going on?
This does not sound right at all. Spencer's just going off.
Yeah, I had kale in my mind the whole time, but avocado. Okay.
Avocado. The method that I've had really success with. So I tried the toothpick method for like a year, and then the seeds would just die. No success, no root. And that's like really disappointing. Then I like a second method, which I think is less popular. I don't know. I'm not up on the channels of avocado pit germinating. Am I even making sense? I don't know if those words that I just strung together actually formed a thought. Maybe you're following. So a second method that I tried was peeling the pit. So they have that little film on the outside. Putting that in a wet paper towel, putting that wet paper towel inside a Ziploc baggie, and then putting that in shade for 2 or 3 weeks. And then finally you have a rooted pit that can go directly into soil, or water if you want to treat it like royalty. But I just put it right into soil, and I've had like a lot of once I've hit this method of germinating an avocado pit, just haven't gone back. And I have at my own house like between 10 and maybe 20 avocado trees just growing like in the basement. In the summer I'll put them in the garage where there's a lot of good light. It'll be like 8 to 10 years if I ever do see fruit from these trees, but I think that it's just a beautiful plant, and just interesting to grow.
Yeah.
Like, why throw out an avocado pit just to end up in a landfill or throw it outside in compost? Why do that if you can have a tree grow from it? That's pretty cool. Yeah. And I've done that same method with mangoes just recently.
How long do they take to grow? Do you know?
Well, same. Well, are you talking about like to grow into a tree or to get fruit from it?
To bear fruit, yeah.
I would say probably 6 to 8 or maybe 10 years. And I'm obviously like in my first year for mangoes. I'd say I'm in my second year for avocados. It'll be.
Yeah, but that is an amazing gift to give people.
Oh yeah, I just like it's cool to me to like. I just at this point I have too many avocados, so I have them in my cupboard, so they're rooted, and I'm just like ready to give them to people. Yeah. I've tried to give some to you, but it's okay if you can't take one into your home. But yeah, just like a nice little gift, and it's super cheap. I eat the avocado, so I get like the immediate benefits of like avocado toast, or what else do I put avocado on, like burgers, etc., etc.
Or just eat it straight.
I've never eaten it straight.
I've never eaten it with toast. I've only ate it like straight? I just cut it up like in half, and then I cut it up in another half.
Wow. And
I just like peel it back and then eat it.
That's really
I've never
intense.
I've never put anything on my avocado.
I see it more as a garnish personally. I had a friend in high school who like made vegan pudding with avocado. I had that once. I thought it was delicious, but I've never had it just straight up by itself. I'm sure it's great.
Yeah, I thought it was normal to eat it like that, but nobody eats it like that. No. Everybody's like, "Oh, you don't put anything on it," or
I have it with eggs. I have it, as a side to several different dishes, but never by itself. I might have to try that. But yeah, on top to go back to kale, avocado, some good nutrients. I think there. I'm not a nutritionist, so don't take your advice from me.
Yeah.
But like, if I'm in the supermarket, spinach, like, I don't know. I eat it quite frequently, like maybe even once a day. But kale is like the top of the scale. It's a good day if I'm eating kale. It's a really good day, and I feel very on top of my health. Same with avocado.
Yeah.
Good fats in
avocado. I feel like that when I eat avocado or cucumber in the morning. I feel like it like helps me with my day.
Cleanse.
Yeah, I think the water just really like boosts you up, and I think that's the best way to get your liquid.
I think everyone just needs to drink more water.
Drink more.
Our
water.
Lives would be changed.
I think you're supposed to get more water through food and fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
Then you don't have to drink so much water.
Maybe. Yeah. We
like,
should all.
Obviously, you need to drink water, but a lot of your liquid should come from vegetables and fruit, I think.
Same with like our nutrients. Yeah. If you can get your vitamins rather than taking a multivitamin, I'm not saying don't take multivitamins, but like eat your fruits and veggies, and Maybe you'll feel good. I don't know.
Exactly.
Try it, and if it doesn't work, send a mod after me. Like, I'll take it.
So I watched all the videos that you sent me,
Oh,
except
wow.
for I didn't finish the Talking to Strangers book.
Oh,
'Cause
wow.
you sent me like the 8-hour audiobook. I've only listened to, I'd say, the first hour.
Yeah. For
And-
context, I sent Mitch probably like 20 hours worth of content. I didn't think, I thought I sent that to you, and I was like, oh, well, like maybe in a year he'll have time to.
No, I went through it
Listen to these things.
I like during my breakfast for some videos, and just throughout when I was like cleaning or doing something.
Should we list what I've sent you? Should we provide people like
Sure.
the
Yeah.
menu? So my memory of it, and you've had the most recent experience of it, of consuming this content, so you can fill in things if I miss them.
Well, I may not remember either, but I'll
I'm
get the
gonna
list up.
say I sent you our conversation a while ago. Something about Yuval Noah Harari. We're talking about technology. We're talking about humanity and consciousness and this stuff. This really interesting things.
Yep, that was the first
Stuff
one.
and things.
Yeah.
Cool. Really specific words. Great job, Spencer. So Yuval Noah Harari, specifically with regards to his book Homo Deus, The Future of Humanity. I haven't read this book, but I listened to the interview on CBC. Really cool. Probably after that, I sent you Martine Rothblatt,
Yep.
TED Talk, with her wife and their robot Bina 48. Interested in hearing your thoughts on all that. Really out there stuff.
Yeah.
Pretty cool, pretty wild. And then of course Malcolm Gladwell, who I just think is fantastic. Like to listen to him, like to read him. And I can't remember if I sent you anything else, but I sent you like
Bina 48 meets
Yeah.
Bina Rothblatt.
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Yeah. I mentioned her in the context of her wife's TED Talk, which I think I also sent you.
Yes, I seen the TED Talk.
Yeah.
One of these I might not have watched.
They pair.
Now that I'm thinking about
They
it.
pair well together, I thought.
Oh, okay.
But in any case, like sent you like 5 or 6 links, I feel, and I was like, oh, like I don't know. I feel like part of a culture today is to consume content that you're anyone is a really big fan of, and then recommend it to people, and then not exactly expect people to take you up on those recommendations and actually watch or listen to the content that you recommend them. And I think it's just something that's like accepted. So I was like, you said like, oh yeah, I'll listen to this and I'll watch this, and I was like,
You took it with a grain of salt.
I was
kinda
like, okay,
yeah,
Mitchell,
yeah,
like,
sure.
who has this much time?
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on what I've said or what I've sent? Sorry.
I would say that you're a lot more intelligent than I am when it comes to that. I guess we could just break it down, can't we?
Sure. I thought you were gonna say, I guess you're like a lot more intelligent than I thought, and I was like prepared to like, oh wow, okay, cool.
Sorry.
But I am.
The first one, When Man Becomes God, the CBC. I'm gonna have to refresh my memory with these, like, just get the visual.
I remember listening to that on CBC, like after having taken a university course at St. Thomas University. Little plug for Stu. So the course was called Great Ideas, Human Nature and Technology. And I just remember like listening to the interview and having a revelation, like synthesizing all of the conversations and projects and readings that I had done that semester, listening to that interview and being like, wow, it all makes sense now. Like, and also it's not just something that we talk about in the classroom, but something that people talk about in the real world. That was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
That was my kind of experience listening to it. It was at the end of a very intense, every semester in university is very intense. So to use fewer words, it was at the end of a semester.
Mm-hmm.
And I just really like Yuval Noah Harari. I think he's got some cool ideas.
He had an
Back
idea.
to you.
Back to you. Yeah, hand me the mic. He was saying at one point that you yourself is a god or something like that.
I have memorized the interview. In what context did he say this?
It's hard to backtrack. I wish I could remember. It's
Apologies to your listeners as well. I think I have a very obnoxious laugh. It sounds like a goose honk. so if I laugh, and I will, and I already have, right into the mic, you're just gonna have to live with that. And good for you for sticking it through. me and my friends at university, we all had obnoxious laughs.
Mm.
And that was just like, I don't know. Do people teach people how to laugh? Like, or do you? It's not a conscious choice, I don't think. I think when I was younger, I had a different laugh, and this is much more natural to me at this point. Just
What?
like
To have a goose laugh?
to have a goose laugh. Like I laugh, it's like on the inhale is when most people ha ha ha. It's exhaling a laugh. But for me, now that I'm like really dissecting it, maybe it'll be different.
I've never noticed that, but that's true.
Like I laugh on the like that part.
You're like a.
Yeah. And like if people don't know me, they might think I'm like experiencing a medical emergency or something. But it's really just I'm having a great time.
I don't think anybody's gonna worry.
That's it. I just did it right there.
Oh.
Yeah.
The video that I found really interesting was when they're trying to make computers. He was a man, or he is a man, but is a woman.
Martin, so formerly Martin, and we don't like this practice because it's called dead naming, so we don't really mention the former name, but was born Martin, is now Martine Rothblatt, and I think is the inventor. Wow, SiriusXM did you watch the TED Talk?
Yeah, she. This is horrible. Martine, right?
Yeah,
Martine. I'm brutal with that.
She was one of the authors that we read in this university course. She wrote a book called From Transgender to Transhuman, about kind of like consciousness and like how we understand our own identities. If we can make this shift or accept like this part of humanity, then how much further is it until we can, I don't know, it was so long ago that I read this book, but considering cyborgs as humans. What is a human? What is a person?
Yeah.
That was kind of the idea of this book. It was really, really interesting.
Well, I read one of the comments on the video, and it said she was a modern Tony Stark.
Oh yeah,
100%. which is true because she created these crazy things.
Billionaire. She solved a disease for her daughter. Yeah.
But when she was creating computers or this intelligence, whatever she was doing, they had
Bina 48. Right?
Bina 48.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
That
Bina
I didn't I watched the
yeah.
start of that video. I didn't finish it, so I didn't get to watch that. It's very quick. It was very quick,
it's
5-minute video or
it's
something.
It's a short one. So I think 48 is like the iPhone 7. Like it's the generation of. So I think the shorthand is just Bina. This is the robot experiment, and 48 was the iteration that she was at that time.
Yeah. But
for context,
one of the examples that she said in the TED Talk was when you're in a car.
Sure.
And I don't know if it was she had to make a decision on a head-on collision or something.
Yeah.
And how would she know to make the right decision and who's in the car and to make the human interaction?
Yeah.
And every single time they like try to analyze the situation, it was different every single time, no matter what it was. And it was like, how can you implement that into basically a robot?
AI.
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence.
Which is,
I think
it's insane.
My memory of it is Yuval Noah Harari makes the same point. I've watched a couple interviews with Yuval. So at some point in his various interviews, he makes a similar point of like, did she use the language of like altruistic versus, what's the opposite of altruistic? Intrinsic?
I don't even know what altruism.
Okay, so
I can't even say it.
Effective altruism. It's like making a decision for the other or making a decision not based on your own like preservation or motives, but like a charitable decision. So an altruistic vehicle would sacrifice the driver, the human person behind the wheel. So what do you call that? A self-driving vehicle, which exists? ?
Kind of.
Tesla?
Kind of.
I think it's getting there.
It's getting there.
So an altruistic vehicle would, in the event of like, you're driving down the road and there's like grandma walking her granddaughter. Do you save them or do you save them? And by doing, it's kind of like the trolley problem. But it puts. So do we know the trolley problem? Do you know the trolley?
I don't know the trolley problem.
It's an old. What is that called? Thought experiment. It's one of the most basic ones. It's one of the first ones people tend to learn. Of like, so you're at a lever, and there's a train track, and on one side of the train track there's 3 people, and on the other side there's 1 person, and there's a train coming, and they're tied to the tracks. So do you pull the lever to
Save
3 people for 1 for 3? And then it just becomes really further complicated by like, well, what if this is the person that solved cancer? Like this 1 person versus those 3, or like how do we put value on people?
Mm-hmm.
As far as like, well, this 1 person does this, and they're so like they could help so many people, while these other 3, they're like, how do we put value on people?
Mm-hmm.
They're just minimum wage workers, like blah 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 blah. Lots of arguments.
Do you think we complicate thoughts like that?
Oh yes. Why not?
Like it's
yeah.
good. You like we have to have those thoughts and those ideas and predictions and scenarios, I guess. But
Yeah.
do you think we complicate it by putting all those every single variable in a situation? Or
Sure. I think it would be very boring if we didn't.
yeah, I think you're right too.
Like it's fun to have complicated thoughts.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
I like the variety, and especially what I loved about this university course that I was in. I feel like so far this conversation is just bouncing everywhere. I'm trying to remember how we landed on this. You asked me first about Yuval.
Harari?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's his last name?
Noah Harari.
Harari. Okay.
Anyways, I think there are going to be parts of this conversation. I'm not taking notes. So there's just going to be parts that if we move too far beyond it, it'll be hard to get back. Which might lead us to maybe an episode 2.
Yeah.
Who knows? I'll leave that in your park. But so we were just talking about automatic vehicles. Your question was, sorry, can you repeat it?
I just said, do you think we overcomplicate it by having
And
these
my
questions?
answer was an enthusiastic yes.
Yes, which I can agree with.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's like, why do we need to take it to that extent?
Oh yeah. Well, then we get into things like mental health and anxiety and overthinking. So yeah, which like that's a reality too. Like there are spectrums. So like I think if someone is comfortable with the amount they think or like likes to be challenged, that's great. I was gonna talk about I'm trying to remember now, tracing it back. That's what I loved about the university course that I was in, because I was able to read certain texts and have an experience of them and tie them to my own personal past experience, like my lens of reading these books. And then I would arrive in class and have discussions with peers and classmates, other students, and be exposed to how they interpreted certain passages or certain texts or certain meanings. And it was almost like I got to read the book 12, 13, or 20 times through the lens of other people's readings, which is just like a fantastic way to read a book, is by being exposed to different readings and interpretations. So yeah, I don't. Is there a plug there? I don't know.
Yeah.
Go to university if you want to. If you don't want to, that's also great. Do something that perhaps you're passionate about.
Stimulate your mind.
Stimulate your mind.
Yeah.
Eat your veggies. This is so great.
Grow plants.
Yeah, grow plants. We're just, this is the Good Life podcast.
This is the Good Life podcast.
That was another name for. Do you have an alarm going off?
Yes, I do.
I was gonna mention the Good Life was another name for a different class. So St. Thomas University has this program called Great Books, and in your second year, if you take this program, one of the courses is called Quest for the Good Life. And actually, those are the 2 complementary courses for this program. In your second year, if it's anything like what I did, it's Quest for the Good Life and then Human Nature and Technology. And for like September until December, you do one course, and then December or January until April, you do the other one. And that was an experience in my second year of university, was those 2 courses. Excellent texts, some really cool perspectives. Basically, the course is like a book club, and you read books and you talk about them in different contexts. So like it's an interdisciplinary comparative literature course. A lot of fancy terms, but essentially, like, universities have classes like English and political science and philosophy. This course, Great Books, combined those courses. So we analyzed or we studied texts under those different contexts or departments or disciplines. Lots of synonyms. So Quest for the Good Life, we read books and then talked about them under those contexts, and same thing with Human Nature and Tech.
Yeah. Nice.
So, okay. This conversation has gone very fast. I don't know how we got from plants to my university experience. But I think the main meal that we were targeting was Martine Rothblatt / all of those videos and articles and links that I sent you.
Yeah.
So you asked a question a while ago about, or you started a question, then I think I interrupted you about vehicles and making choices. Trolley problem. Did we feel like we understand the trolley problem?
We finished it. I think it makes sense to people.
We've satisfied the trolley problem.
You had two options on a railway. You had to pull the lever to make sure you made the right decision.
And right decision is controversial.
Well, right decision, yeah.
Yeah. It's just
a decision.
It's complicated. Yeah. The thing is, for so long, I think this is what you've all said. Maybe Martine also said it. For hundreds, if not thousands of years, these have just been problems that are fun to think about and to debate and argue. But it hasn't manifested there hasn't been a reason to have an answer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can just think whatever you want, and that's fine, whatever, it's good. And it might indicate something about your personality or your political views, blah, 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 blah. It might be some kind of insight into your character. Beside the point. Now, with automatic self-driving cars, actually you do need an answer to this question of, like, when you buy a vehicle, do you want it to be an altruistic vehicle, so it sacrifices the driver for the pedestrian, or do you want it to be, I can't remember the term, we'll call it like an intrinsic, I'll remember the term like hours later after this podcast, but like a selfish vehicle that, no, I'd rather kill like the pedestrian and save myself. Or do you want it to be, there's like a kind of like an ambidextrous, which is not the term that was used, but like let's flip a coin in the millisecond that we have and then surprise me, like,
yeah,
sacrifice the driver or sacrifice the pedestrian.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on the day or depending on what you had for breakfast that morning. Like, how are decisions made? Yeah.
Have you ever watched the movie Sully?
Sully, the
airplane?
Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
I watched. No, I'm thinking of Captain Phillips. I don't think I've seen Sully.
Well, do you know the story about Sully?
He landed a plane in the something river.
The Hudson River.
Yeah. That's all. That's the extent of my knowledge, right there.
Well, it's just a good example that. He got the bird, hit the engine, right, and then he had to land. Mm-hmm. But he made every single decision and calculation that he had to make to land either between this airport or this airport, because there's two different distances. Yep. He only had so much time. But then when he did land and he saved everybody in the water, they had to put it through a simulation, and they tried like 120 different situations.
Yeah.
And they finally were able to land on, or I don't know, maybe it was like 7 times, but they were finally able to land at an airport. Mm-hmm. But he said, in the movie, I guess, but he like argued that took you 7 tries.
Yeah,
he said he only had one chance. He said, like, you took all the human factor out of the whole situation. Like,
humans are not going to make decisions like machines do.
No. So I don't know. That's like if it was a self-automated plane.
Yeah.
And it had to make the decision of, which airport do I go to? And it just chose that airport without, like, maybe it would work, but maybe it wouldn't. I don't know. Yeah.
And there's another problem with this as well, which we do see actually, like, day to day, if you're a day-to-day person. If you in fact exist day to day.
If you're here today, you are a day-to-day person.
Yeah. As are we all. Of like, will there one day be, maybe there already is, a self-driving plane? Or like, will a union of pilots say, no, we're going to keep our jobs. Our jobs make our lifestyles very pleasurable. We don't like imagine the same thing with like self checkouts at the grocery store, at Walmart. Like machines are able to complete some jobs quite well, taking out human error, perhaps, maybe replacing it with their own robotic error, etc., etc., etc. Yuval, I think, in his book, Returning to Yuval, makes an argument that like once humans don't have to work anymore, like what do we turn our attention to? If machines can do our work for us to such a good extent, all the cashiers are replaced. Let's say in this scenario, all the pilots are replaced. Maybe there's some jobs that do require more of a human intuition. I'm thinking like doctors, nurses, people that make like those really big decisions. So what do we do with our time?
I know. No,
like, what do we
is that why the metaverse is coming? So it's a whole different world without us having to ever do anything else outside in the real world.
Wow, that's not the answer I think that Yuval landed on. Remember, I haven't read this book in its entirety, but I think he lands on the conclusions.
When did he publish this book?
Like I'd say within. I really can't answer.
Okay.
I think his first one, 'Sapiens, came out when Barack Obama was in office. Obama gave it good reviews, 'Sapiens.
Mm-hmm.
Then Homo Deus was probably maybe 2017, 2018, perhaps.
Okay. I've had *Sapiens* saved for a long time. I just never ordered it or anything. So
yeah. The order of the books. So *Sapiens* is like a look at the past. Homo Deus is a look at the future. That's what. So Homo Deus, you mentioned earlier, like man becoming their own god, or man is their own god.
Mm-hmm.
Homo Deus translates to like man god, like when looking at the integration of man and machine. Basically, I think one idea of it is like evolution. I'm trying to string so many thoughts together, and keep in mind I haven't read this book, so it's actually like I'm just pulling stuff out of thin air that I think I know about this book that I haven't read. So it might all be wrong. I'll read the book and then come back later and talk about it.
Yeah, part 2.
Yeah, really. Like what was I gonna say? So evolution has been determined for us for so long by factors outside of our control, like our sound, by our environment. Like we adapt, we change to our environment, which we don't, in the past, we haven't necessarily controlled. Now we're at a point in human history when we can control our environment, and in fact, we can probably control the direction that we go into. As far as, well, I see you're wearing glasses right now. Is that a kind of technology? Are you enhancing your ability as a human by wearing glasses? Maybe not necessarily. You can look at that as well with like prosthetics and limbs and things like that.
No,
like,
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand.
A lot of memories of my university time. My professor was really interested in like what do we consider a real athlete versus like a real musician. If you followed the Olympics at all this past year, it seems like it was a while ago now. There's this huge like Russian steroid, or is there another word for it? Like performance enhancing drugs. Yeah. And we hold the Olympics on such a pedestal of like no. In fact, if you have a prosthetic limb, like you're in a different part of the Olympics, because we don't know how to, like, we just want the human body at its most like essential form. What does that mean? Of just like athletes who are not determined by substances that they intake or changes that they've made to their body. So there's like that standard Olympics versus the Paralympics. And so we kind of see those as two different camps. And then like this professor that I had also talked about like Jimi Hendrix. And if you can picture or imagine, if you know Jimi Hendrix, with the afro and with the bandana.
Yep.
And it was rumored, or perhaps it was found to be true, that he would like put a little piece of like acid or LSD or like performance enhancing, like underneath the
Wow.
bandana,
And would go
and-
through his sweat?
something like that. Yeah, I don't know. I am not the expert there.
Wow.
Yes, but and that would like that perhaps contributed to the amazingness, the trance-like greatness of his guitar solos.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like we consider that to be like real music with the performance enhancing stuff, etc. Versus like things like athletics, which we absolutely do not. Is there an endpoint to this thought that I had? Not really. Yeah. There's gonna be a lot of, I feel like, loose ends in this conversation, and I'm just kind of like accepting that.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
A lot of times, if there is loose ends,
Mm.
I'll implement
We'll
pitch.
just edit it out.
No,
just
not
take out the
necessarily.
whole
No,
conversation.
no, yeah. I'll just cut you right off.
It'll
No.
be a 5-minute podcast, and we've been here for a while. at this
However
point.
long, yeah.
Another thought experiment on this same kind of subject of like replacing certain human components like body parts and other things involves like Theseus's ship. Have you heard of Theseus's ship?
Nope, can't even say that word.
Theseus is a name.
Theseus
Theseus.
in ship.
Like it's possessive. Like it's his ship. Like
Okay.
Spencer's ship.
Yep.
But it's Theseus's ship.
His ship.
Yeah. So Theseus, if I'm getting my Greek mythology right, he like slayed the Minotaur. There was this labyrinth, and he could get lost in it. So he took some thread, and he found his way to the to the center of the labyrinth, slayed the Minotaur, and found his way out. And as Minotaur was causing such a upheaval, it was causing a lot of turbulence for this community. So he was considered a hero. And that's like a SparkNotes version, and it's probably inaccurate. So do your own research. Look into Theseus. In any case, Theseus was this character who was revered by his community, considered a hero. So I think he went to battle, and then he came back, and they wanted to preserve his ship. So Theseus's ship. So they, like, when he landed, they're like, we're gonna keep your ship. It's like this. It's this trophy. It's this really cool memorabilia, like question mark. But there was an issue of like after 10 years, the ship being in the harbor, the bottom would like rust out. Or back then, ships were made of wood, so it would just like the wood would become rotten and need replaced. And so every 10 years or less, like parts of the ship were being replaced with new parts. And so how do you measure the authenticity, the realness? When does it no longer become Theseus's ship?
Mm-hmm.
As we replace the parts of it, when is it no longer considered to be the original? Is it after you've replaced one part, like if you replace this one screw? Or is it after you perhaps change more than 50% of the ship? You can kind of apply that argument a little bit as well. Like, does your thinking of this one instance with Theseus' ship also, like, how does it correlate with your thinking of
I guess you could take
prosthetics?
like if Spencer had no arms and legs,
Yeah.
how much is he still Spencer?
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus how much are you not Spencer? I
Sure.
like
I think if I had
if I
had
gave
fake
you a
limbs,
fake arm,
I would consider.
would you still
yeah.
be Spencer, or would you be considered not Spencer?
I would consider the whole thing to be Spencer.
Yeah,
to be
it's
like
part of you.
It's part of me. Exactly. Like, do you consider yourself to be fully Mitchell with or without your glasses?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like. Yeah.
But a lot of people would identify me with glasses, which is kind of so.
Another strange thing is like how other people see us versus how we see ourselves.
That's a weird.
To be perceived, it's strange.
It's very strange.
Yeah.
Because I have no idea how people perceive me.
Odd, right?
I've thought about it.
That's another theme or area of study that we did in this course. I feel like I'm just drawing. This whole conversation so far has been drawing on this course that I took in university. I really love this course.
That's all good.
One of my majors.
That's what you're knowledgeable in.
Yeah.
Not everybody has taken this course, Spencer.
It's a fantastic course, and I highly recommend it. We were
What's
studying.
it called?
It's Great Ideas or
Great
Great
Ideas.
Books.
Okay.
Great Books / Great Ideas.
And Quest. Wait, what was
Quest for the Good Life. So
that? Was a different thing.
It's a subcomponent of the same thing.
Okay.
So year number 1, if you take great books. You're taking Aquinas. It's your intro course to this program. If you plan on majoring or if you plan on minoring, you take Aquinas. And that sets you up for success in the later years. It's the baseline. You need to take Aquinas it's a little bit flexible because you could jump into year 2 without taking Aquinas, but you're really recommended to take Aquinas. Aquinas, when I was in university, I think took up 3 out of 5. So you would take a course load of like 5 courses. Aquinas was 3 out of those 5 courses. So it was like the one that you're dedicating the most of your time to. I think now it might possibly be just 2 of your 5 courses. I think they've lessened that a bit since I graduated. So Aquinas is year 1. Year 2 is Quest for the Good Life, followed by Human Nature and Technology. Year 3 is Philosophy and Art and Freedom. Yeah, that's right. And then year 4, I took Nations and Borders. So we're studying what is a border, what does it mean to be a nation, what kind of flexibility is in there, nations and borders. And then semester 2 was love and friendship, and it's a really beautiful thing that we're able to study like a theme like love and friendship. That was the year that so during that semester is when the pandemic shut everything down. I think I would have loved to finish out that course if I'd been able to. We did finish it, but it was just not how we started it. Like, it was online and the early months of the pandemic. And then every second year they switch it out with like justice. I think like you can study justice in year 4 or year 3. Anyways,
what is justice?
Yeah, what is justice? And maybe there's a course called free will. I never took it. And then on top of all that, so that's like if you're majoring, you take all those things. If you're minoring, you take a few of those things. If you're like honoring, there's like honors seminars. So if you want to be like really into this program, you can take additional courses on top of your usual 5, I think, and study like Plato's Republic. We're gonna look at Plato. He's the guy that's like, there's a cave and people are chained up in it, and their reality is the shadows on the wall. There's a shadow right here. Is this reality, or am I the reality? That's a very oversimplified version of Plato and the Republic, but that's one of the famous anecdotes from that.
Was it the slaves in the prison?
Can you elaborate?
I might be thinking of something completely wrong, but I think there's slaves in the prison or underground, and all they saw was the shadow, and they thought that was them.
Yeah.
Is that what? Maybe I could be totally wrong.
You might not call them slaves. You might just call them like they're prisoners.
Or they're prisoners. Yeah.
Yeah, they're just like people who were born into chains, and that's really like, that's how. What is it an allegory for? It's the allegory of the cave. What is it an allegory for? It might be an allegory. It might be a metaphor for, like education. Like, you are born into the world, and you're looking at shadows this whole time. To them, that's their reality, is these shadows. But then through chance or through accident or through fate, one of them perhaps gets freed from these chains and gets to exit the cave and goes outside and like looks at the sun and sees like, oh, there's things that actually are not shadows, that actually impact shadows. And then he tries to go back and he tries to tell his cave friends about it, and they don't take politely.
They think he's crazy.
They're like, what? Like,
yeah,
come on, man. There's these shadows here. Like, this is all there is. Anyways, Plato's Cave.
So we were
Pretty
talking
cool.
about good ideas.
The program's called Great Ideas.
Great Ideas.
Or Great Books. I use those interchangeably. Yes.
Yeah. We jumped off to something else.
We were talking
while
originally.
Yeah, what were we originally talking about?
So we started. We need like a map of this conversation. We were talking about those links that I sent you, in the context then of human nature and technology, and then I got a little bit off track with thought experiments, the trolley problem, and then Theseus's ship.
Yeah. We got to the ship, and we talked about like when do you consider Spencer and not?
Yeah.
And then we were talking about identity and how people perceive us.
Oh, I was gonna mention as well. Yes, on that.
Because we jumped to something else while we were on that topic.
There was a Shakespeare play that we read, Julius Caesar, and like how you basically need other people to have some sort of perception of yourself, like to see yourself. Most realistically, you almost have to see yourself through the eyes of another. And whether that's a friend or a partner or co-conspirator.
I always wondered, sorry to
yeah.
cut you off. I
No,
always
no.
wondered when people say like be yourself.
What does that mean?
Yeah, because I was always wondering how much does being yourself get influenced by others
Oh, of course. Yeah.
to be more of whatever you, quote unquote yourself is.
And we might have had, I don't know what your experience was, but like in
Trauma.
the early days of the pandemic.
No, I'm just kidding.
Well, talking about traumatic experiences, like in the early days of the pandemic when like I wasn't socializing with anybody, I don't know anybody who really was, like when we were like, when they said 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and then it turned out to be like, I think I was pretty much in my house March until June when I went to work. And between then, like I kind of remember the first staff meeting of like, oh, there's like still people out here. Like we're like I get to work with people in person. That's so odd and unique. And I think that like for a little window of time, for that 3 or 4 months essentially, March until June, if you were locked up like I was, you did kind of have a little bit of a insight into what are you like without those social influences. I didn't it was so there are other factors as well. Like there were other stresses on people at that time. I didn't particularly like myself during that stretch of time. But it was because I was under a lot of stress. I was finishing up a degree and like had like the context, the change in environment from like going from university to like back home was like very strange and much more sped up than I had anticipated. When you go to university, if you go to university, basically like there's Easter weekend and then it's a slow draw to the end of the semester. And between those dates, you can slowly move things home. Like over the year, if you live in a dorm room, I just like accumulate stuff. I bring stuff from home, take it into the dorm room. And then near the end of the year, it's a slow process of like, okay, I don't need this stuff for the next couple of weeks. I'll take it home so that at the end of it, after 2 or 3 weeks, then I just have like one carload full of things of my stuff. And maybe I put some of it in storage in the city that I'm studying in. And then I can drive the rest home for the summer or wherever I'm residing. Where in year 4 with the pandemic that just like suddenly out of nowhere, it wasn't out of nowhere. It was a very slow progression until it reached us.
Mm-hmm.
I had to take my whole dorm room, and in the span of a day, disassemble it and transport it to my next place.
Yeah.
It was very disorienting. And so that disorientation followed, like, just, I think it, like, colored my
Did it
experience.
throw you off because it was so structured for, like, 4 years in a row, and then it just, like,
Yeah.
it was instantly, boom.
You kind of
Life, basically. Just,
yeah.
All right, here
Suddenly,
you go.
yeah, you're in this new context, and yeah, it was very strange. Threw me off for sure. Because being in year 4, okay, I've moved out of university 4 times by now. Like I'm quite good at the process. I know I know the steps. I know what to do, and like how to make it as easy as possible. And now there's this circumstance where I can't. Like I just have to pick up my stuff and go, and that was very interesting. Yeah.
Nice.
Talking about the first few days, do you mind if we just transition briefly to this?
I don't care what we transition to.
It's a
Sure.
nice little
Absolutely.
segue.
Go right into
A
it.
little piece of self-promo here. I had a poem that was published earlier this month. This book arrived in early March. I think.
Do you want to show off the book into the camera so people can see what the...
QWERTY. It's the most satisfying name to write on a keyboard because all of these letters are just one after the other. They're
Nice.
KWERTY. You just kind of put your finger in a line and drag it across the keyboard, and then you've written out the title of this journal.
That's awesome.
It's the UNB, so St. Thomas shares a campus with the University of New Brunswick in Fredericton, UNB graduate student journal. And I've been submitting to them for, I think since 2019, like 3 or 4, once a year for 3 years. And last year, in 2021, poem was accepted, and in 2022, it was printed in this lovely little edition.
One of your poems?
One of my poems, yeah.
Nice.
And it was a poem that was written during the first few months of the pandemic, and it's about those first few it's about those first few months, when I'll read the poem and then talk about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
Go ahead. Three,
that's
two,
cool.
one, boom.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's by me, QWERTY. The poem's title is "The Day My Father Went In for His Hernia Operation." We played cards, listened to politicians argue against themselves about food assistance programs for school children amidst the pandemic. Hernia. Balloon, slightly deflated, twisting in on itself, slightly protruding. Knuckles stickied post-sucker punch. The next morning, the dog rejected her pills, buried in a bowl beneath mashed banana and incommunicable sympathy. Palm cupped for a single hissing ice cube, compromised snow globe, skating perilous, cradled in the onset of my lava lamp fingers. Melting carcass offered to the snake plant. It's what we do, offer things. Ice becomes water, pills to dogs, flame, smoke, poems to hernias. And that's the poem.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm
Feelings to hernias.
going to give this to you. QWERTY very kindly sent me 2 copies, and I only need 1, and I've read this. So this is like yours to
Thank
put
you very much.
along with all of your
I
cool
really,
swag.
I really appreciate it.
Feel
I'm
free
gonna
to
throw it up
Yeah.
here for now. Hopefully it doesn't fall.
yeah. Feel free to
Hopefully that's in the camera.
Yeah.
QWERTY.
you can read it, and if
I
you ever
will
come
read it.
across like a free library, or I don't know if you keep your books,
I do keep my. I have a.
Yeah.
I have a couple shelves.
feel free to keep it, but also feel free to just like pass it on to whoever you think would like it.
I love to
next.
pass on books, but I always want to get them back. So.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair. If you're interested in purchasing a copy, they're $10.
Mhm.
The
I really
QWERTY
appreciate
website.
it. That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's an amazing gift.
So I've been working on poetry for a little while, and I started with online journals, and more recently I've gotten into print journals like this one. Yeah, it's just a little fun thing to
Is the
pass your
back?
time with.
This is the front.
And there's I particularly I like my poem, but there's a lot of other good writing in this issue. I think it's a beautiful cover.
There's
QWERTY-
no rules to poetry, is there?
rules. Well, like
It's like journaling.
yeah,
Like what is?
I think your
Mhm.
intro courses teaches you that. I think if you take if you take courses or workshops on poetry, your first few years will teach you that there are rules and you have to follow some of them. And I think as you get better at it, and as you get into later years of taking courses, they teach you that there are no rules and that you can break all the rules. I think you have
Are
to
there, like-
learn them
oh.
first.
Nice.
Okay, wow, this is going just by so fast.
It's probably teaching rules, right? Is it
Yeah, what do
like,
you mean
is
by
it-
teaching rules?
like is there? Like you said, there was rules at the start,
Mm-hmm.
and then later on you realize that there are no rules. But the rules at the start, is that a way so you can think like a poet, or
Maybe.
I have no idea because
You mentioned journaling, and I think that's a helpful metaphor or way of thinking about it. As far as you need to be a good poet, you might need to be, and maybe this is false. When I say, as I mention rules that I make up, I also think of like the alternatives of like actually this is all false. You don't need. I think you need to be a good writer before you can be a good poet. But then I go on the flip side of like, but being a bad writer could open you up to a whole lot of other opportunities. Now we're back to the overthinking thing that we mentioned earlier of like, oh, there's all these infinite possibilities. Let's talk about my own experience because that's what I'm good at.
that's what you know best.
Yeah, that's what I'll anchor myself to. Of like, yeah, I wrote a lot of bad poetry before. Now I'm writing stuff that I'm really happy about and that I think is rather good. And like my most recent stuff, maybe I'm not a great judge of my own work. Like maybe now I'm writing bad things, but I kind of like them. That's the rule that I think I have for myself is I have to, when I write for myself kind of first. And once I'm happy with it, then I share it with my friends. And then maybe I take it to a workshop or two. I was doing a workshop yesterday, which is I love the experience. Being a poet, being a writer, it's a very like solitary experience. It's spending a lot of time in your own head, doing your own thing.
Well, writing and thinking is the exact same thing.
Yeah, a little bit.
Well, how can you?
Plato talks about this as well. In his book, The Phaedrus, of like, there's like I think it's a generational argument. We're gonna have to bookmark what we were just talking about so we don't forget it. Like 30 minutes from now, and
Okay.
I'm like, oh yeah, this other thing.
What are we bookmarking?
Poetry.
Poetry. Okay.
Bookmark this poetry experience.
Okay.
Plato in Phaedrus provides. So he just Socrates tells a lot of stories. So Plato writes the books. Socrates has the conversations. Plato's dialogues, like his books are almost like scripts. Like Socrates went into town and then he had a conversation with these people and this is what they said. And it's like Socrates, argument. Interlocutor is a term that's used in Socratic scholarship, but just like passerby or the person that he's having the conversation with, counter argument. And then you just kind of like, you read the script, this like transcript of this, think of it as like an ancient podcast almost. Wow. Is this groundbreaking Socratic scholarship right here?
Stuff.
Yeah. It's the original. Maybe Socrates was the original podcaster.
Yeah.
Or Plato. What was that? So Plato, through Socrates, I was talking about this generational argument of like, you know how old people are generally portrayed as being like kids on their phone these days, blah blah blah. Your memory's getting bad because you're on your phone all day.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's one portrayal of older person, and I think it's an argument like you don't really see millennials making that same argument. It's like it's a depiction of old person to younger person, and so long ago, I think we saw. I'm getting this news from social media, so maybe it's not entirely accurate, and it's embarrassing that I'm drawing on social media as a source. But, so, what was it called? Like blackboards or like tablets? Like when they used to write with chalk in school, the older generation of educators were like, well, you shouldn't use chalk. We have this other like instrument of like, I don't know. I think now that I'm like relaying it, I actually think this story is false. But like, so as each generation passes, they become skeptical of the new technology.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, like writing had to be invented. We had to like put down our thoughts onto paper, or at that point it was probably onto stone. And the older generation was, well, Socrates depicts it as, or Plato depicts it as, they were skeptical of writing. Like your memory will get bad, I think was one argument. And I don't remember any of the other arguments, but it was interesting that, so you can imagine like Plato writing this scene of Socrates talking with this other person, telling this story about like writing is bad, it will make your memory bad. But this book has lasted like thousands of years, and so obviously there's a contradiction of like, it's not making your memory bad. In fact, it might be educating. Like other people are able to then read your thoughts and educate themselves. And so contradiction is funny. Where was I going with that? That's kind of the point I think I was making.
Okay.
You had asked earlier about journaling. How do we get there? How do we get to
journaling?
How do we get to?
We're talking about how like writing and thinking is the exact same thing.
Yeah, and then I debated that, and there goes our whole complicated thought issue.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, maybe writing and thinking is the same thing. I'll entertain that argument.
I don't think I could write anything down that I'm not thinking about.
Sure. Writing can be a way of helping to make sense of some thoughts. I think there's also like that's interesting. Like I have to think about it.
Like if I was writing any research paper or any
thought is determined by language. Like what presupposes language. Like that's a powerful statement, I think, actually. As far as like, you think about it in terms of I je suis bilingue. Ooh, cool. But
that's the crowd's reaction.
Yeah, wow. He just did the thing. So I it's cool that I can do some speaking and do a little bit of writing in French. Not a great amount, but a little bit. But my way of thinking in those two languages is different.
Mm-hmm.
For example, French is a very gendered language. objects have like
A he or
le
she.
chaise,
Yeah.
la tableau.
That's where people struggle with when it comes to, is it a female word or a male
Yeah.
word? It's a struggle.
That's like, and that really colors one's experience of day-to-day interactions of like, there was another TED Talk someone did describing language, and they were like, they had this picture of a bridge, or they had just this, not even a picture, but they had this bridge, and they asked people of different languages, like, could you describe this bridge? And one person described it as like beautiful and luxurious, and they're just all these like very aesthetic. Is that an adjective? Is
You
that
just
an
got me on a
adverb?
random thought.
Yeah.
What if you were to create a language with as little negative words as possible? So it was only positive words, but you had to create a language to only speak.
That would be a very positive, very optimistic society there.
Yeah, that'd be insane. I don't know even.
I think people would find ways of describing things negatively, positively.
Mhm.
You would find your way around it somehow, like codes.
Yeah.
So these people of one language described it very femininely, perhaps,
Mhm.
and like these people of this other language described the bridge like, oh, it's very strong, it's very dependable, it's very like very masculine. It's because bridge in their language was this masculine or feminine term.
Nice.
It's the same bridge.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that like people are observing the bridge, and then their understanding of the word colors their experience of it.
It's kind of cool how
else does that apply to our life?
Here's the mic. No. Just to kind of add to your thought, when people know more than one language, whatever language they have a lot of emotion behind is the language that they'll use to speak and like lash out or put love towards. Does that make sense? So if my natural language is English, it's going to be easier for me to have emotion behind my words than if I'm trying to speak a native language that I don't know, because I'm kind of thinking about what I'm saying. It's hard to put like emotion behind those words. I think to a point.
I agree with you. I think native language is English. Like for us, our native language. So for alien or a foreign language.
Foreign language. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah. Not. I don't mean to correct you on your own podcast.
No, correct me. Correct me. That is the goal.
Yeah, but
correct me.
I was just thinking about that. Yeah, it would. You certainly express yourself. It's more authentically, but then that's
you're more human. Basically, just more human. Is that
based on whatever language you're born into?
Yeah,
like that is interesting because I think it just opens you up to like once you know more than one language. I think you definitely have to examine your own biases.
Mm-hmm.
For example, when I was in French in school, middle school, high school, you're asking like, well, why are these words backwards? Did you take French?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
Yes.
So like, je m'appelle, my name. I can't think of an example at this moment.
Maybe, I know exactly what you mean, though.
Some terms, some way of phrasing things seem to be backwards, but they're only backwards because I learned them
forward.
To a French person, they would be like, why are you talking backwards?
Well, you're just comparing it to the language that you know.
Yeah.
So technically it's not backwards, but it is when you're trying to relate it to
There's no natural... Is there a natural language? I don't think so.
Well, whatever you speak. Yeah, there's not a natural language.
There's not an objectively natural
Why do you think English took over?
That's a great question. I took a course on the history of the English language in university.
Nice.
So I had to draw back on that. Power. It's all about power. It might have to do with the invention of the printing press.
I guess a lot of media would have been...
Well...
sorry, maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, you're on the right track. What I studied was... So the class that I took, and there might be classes that give other depictions, but the inventing of the printing press, before then, think about the Bible. Think about how like texts move. Priests or those higher up in the church dynamic, clergymen, I don't know, not really sure of the terms, but they used to like, you could preach because people who were higher up in the church had better educations and could read, and then they could preach to those who didn't know how to read, didn't have access to texts. So with the invention of the printing press, so let me backtrack. Before the invention of the printing press, there was these people in power in the church, and they could preach whatever basically message they wanted to about Christianity, or you could apply this to any kind of religious text, and really not be challenged by their congregation, because what does the congregation know? They haven't read the Bible, they haven't read the text, and also, well, actually, I'm refreshing my memory of things like the Bible was probably written in Latin or Hebrew and then translated into English, and then there was these like other translations with King James and so forth. Your original question was, why did English become the dominant? Maybe
not dominant, just the most
popular, the most well used. I think it has to do with power. I think it has to do with
widespread.
Yeah, and as you have certain technologies, like if the inventor of the printing press was in England, then they get a leg up on publishing the books,
Mm-hmm.
and then those books become more widespread,
And like maybe famous stories.
earlier, faster, more efficient than people who are still writing by scribes, writing by hand. So like if I wanted a translation of this other religious text, I don't have the printing press yet. I'm gonna ask so many people to like write it out by hand and then distribute it.
Mm-hmm.
Takes way more time. Yeah. Is English the language of the future? Maybe not. It might be Mandarin. I think more people on Earth might speak like Mandarin Chinese.
I was wondering that when I did say English, I was like, wait, maybe I'm unsure about that.
Well, we're so imbued in it, like it.
Mm-hmm.
It's maybe the native language seems like the dominant language. I don't know.
I just thought of a weird question. Do more people know multiple languages, or do more people know a single language?
Well, that's a great.
That's just a question. That's just a question. There's no answer to this question.
I'm not a linguist.
Yeah.
But okay, well, let's also look at. Well, okay, so let's re-examine the question. As far as like English borrows a lot of terms, I think a lot of languages borrow a lot of terms from other languages. I have a personal anecdote that I can share of like we had an exchange student when I was in high school. My brother was in middle school, and they were from Colombia, and there they spoke Spanish. They spoke Colombian. Oh, I'm getting all of these things mixed up. Anyways, they were speaking Spanish on the phone with their parent, and I could hear. I shouldn't have been listening. That's rude. But over the phone, I could hear like they were having a conversation with their parent. Their parent said something, and then they said like, "Oh, I didn't understand what you just said. Could you say that again?" This exchange student said that. And before the mother, I was trying to be ambiguous about the relationship of the parent, but before the mother could repeat what they had said in Spanish, maybe they were speaking Colombian. And keep in mind, I don't know Spanish or Colombian, but I do know French. I was able to say, "Oh, your mother was asking you about this thing or this element of your experience," because I know English and French, and I really do think they were speaking Spanish, unless they're speaking Colombian, and maybe that's very close. Historically, Spain was conquered first by the French, and then conquered by the English, and that went back and forth a little while. So really influenced their language. Spanish has huge similarities to French and English because of the who was in power at certain points throughout history. And so not knowing Spanish, I was still able to understand the question that the mother had asked. With my limited knowledge.
It's true.
So with that being the case, do more people speak one language or multiple? Probably the answer is, well, one of the things you have to dissect or examine there is, like, what is a language? Kind of going back to the nations and borders class of, like, if English borrows from these multiple other languages, is that purely English? Like, what is pure English?
Mm-hmm.
Or what is a pure language if it borrows from some... And I'm trying to think of, like, another example to give, like, concretely that English borrows from other languages. And I can't think of one now.
Well, music would borrow
Yeah.
from other instruments a little bit.
How do you mean?
Again, I'm not very musically inclined. Well, when you're saying languages, like when you learn a language and you learn maybe 3 languages, you can kind of implement those 3 languages to help you learn a couple more languages. Because I think, well, I was reading something or listening to something about you can learn a bunch of languages, but soon you'll just end up jumbling a bunch of different languages together. But it does help you understand another language by knowing a couple other different languages.
I would agree.
Which is the same with music. Is if you know how to play these 3 instruments, a lot of times you'll be able to play like 6 more different styles of instruments because you know those other 3, which helps correspond with the other ones.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. As far as when you have experience in multiple things, it makes the path easier to learn other things.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
Like if you know, I don't know, it's probably a stupid example, but if you knew how to play ball hockey and like lacrosse in a sense, then it might make hockey easier.
There are certainly sports, if you think about it in terms of sports, that are combinations of other sports. And right now, every time I say something that I think is true, my mind instantly goes blank of all examples. I can't think of a single English word that borrows from another language, but I'm sure it happens, and I'm certain of yes. What is a combination sport? Ping
pong.
It's table tennis. Yeah. Well,
tennis with the table.
It's a miniaturized version of tennis, so it's not exactly a combination. It's just miniaturized.
Yeah, true.
But I'm thinking of like, well, is triathlon a sport, or is that just a way of measuring 3 different things?
Yeah.
No shade to triathlonists out there.
Water polo.
Water polo? Is that when you're on a horse, or is that not when you're on a horse?
Water polo is like when you're in the water.
Yeah.
And you're swimming around, but you have it's basically handball.
If you can do any sport in the water, then I think you're adding. I think you are in that sense combining multiple sports.
Golf and crochet? No, I don't know.
Well, can we look at spike ball? It's a hybrid of, what is it a hybrid of? A little bit volleyball.
A little bit, because you got like the 3 hits.
A little bit volleyball. It's a little bit. What else is it a little bit of?
To be honest, I don't know. I don't.
What is spike ball?
What is
language?
Ball?
That's what we're examining.
You know what's a very difficult thing to do is try to implement a new sport into the world.
It's also funny, complete side note, to try to examine language through language. Like there's no other way that you can kind of.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
You
have to only understand it through another language that you understand.
Or me trying to understand just language. I mentioned earlier, like, does thought presuppose language? I can't just think about language. I'm thinking about language through English.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean.
And if I was to write that down, then my thoughts are constrained to the English language unless I write in other languages to express things better. But back to your point, you just said about sports.
Well, there's so many organized sports in the world that it's hard to create a new one. Like spike ball, for an example.
Yeah.
It's a new sport. It's not considered a professional sport. Every sport, I guess you can consider it a professional sport, but it'd be really hard to make hacky sack a worldwide sport that everybody in the world is kind of watching on TV, like soccer or basketball or golf or football or hockey or anything like that. Like to make it a world-class sport, it's very hard to build something new into it. I was thinking about that the other day.
To make it like universally
preferable? I don't know, like I'm just spike ball right up there. For an example, could you see that? Can you see that logo?
I can't see that
of them
logo.
playing.
Yeah.
Could you see that being on the main screen?
Oh no.
That's what I'm saying.
Right now I can. Maybe
I can. I mean, I can imagine it. I guess, but
for people who are hardcore into it.
Yeah. I think it's hard to. I always wondered if there's ever going to be a sport that will come into the mainstream sport, like basketball, like soccer, like golf, that will be completely new.
Fascinating.
Because it's hard to build a sport not based on what other sports have already been built on.
One of so after I did my BA at St. Thomas, I also did my B.Ed, so I'm a licensed teacher as well. And one of the projects that we did during the B.Ed program was, I think it was for a social studies class, and someone was teaching like ancient Greek culture slash the invention of the Olympics. So for this program, we had to invent lesson plans and then present them to our peers. And so one of my colleagues did a lesson plan on, it was either teaching the invention of the Olympics or teaching sport through a cultural lens of that's what it was. Yeah. They looked up sports in different parts of the world and then had us make up our own. And it was challenging and it was kind of fun. It's a fun little lesson to exercise of imagination to be like, yeah, these are all the sports that I know. I'll take certain elements of them and then make basically a Frankenstein composition of a new sport.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's very tough. I don't know how it would be possible. Could you implement, I don't know. I was going to say hunting and something, but I guess you could take archery for an example. I have no idea.
Yeah.
We bookmarked an idea.
Poetry.
Poetry experiments or experience.
Experience.
Is that what we're saying?
Yeah.
I don't know why I put PPE, but
personal protective equipment.
Yeah.
So I was talking earlier about I wrote a lot of bad poems. Now I'm writing, I think, some better work. I don't remember exactly what we were talking about with regards to my personal poetry experience. Rather, so I made a point earlier that writing's rather lonely, and it's cool to bring other people into that process through workshopping and through just getting other people's input, bringing in a readership. But first, my process is I write for myself, and once I like what I write, then I'm able to share it with others, starting with my friends and then sending it out into the world and seeing if it gets picked up anywhere, like in this latest issue of QWERTY.
So for that book, you said you sent 4?
So since 2019, I had made, I think, 3 submissions of 2019, 2020, 2021, and maybe 2021 was one that got in. So the second, I don't know. But in each of those submissions, I had probably 3 or 4 or 5 poems, and the editors just pick which one they like the best.
And do you have to find out by going in the book, or do they tell you?
Oh, when they accept your work, they're like, hey, thanks for submitting. We're really interested in this piece, and then that kind of frees up my the other pieces. So now I'm sending those pieces to other journals, seeing if they're interested in them, trying to find the right home for them. I have in April, I think. I have some new poems. It's very rare. Usually, my experience, I'm an emerging writer. It's
what does it mean to be an emerging writer?
Just I haven't put out a full chapbook yet, which is a smaller version of a full collection. I haven't put out any.
You're basically an apprentice.
A little bit, yeah. I'm starting as a writer. I haven't put out a full book or a full collection yet, but I put in a couple poems out to a couple journals, and that's what it means to emerge. It just means it means that I'm starting.
Yeah.
Like an apprentice. So it's a rare experience for me to have a recent poem out and also have work upcoming. Usually it's I submit, there's a lot of rejection. That's most of what being a writer is being rejected from publications. Which is fine. It's part of part of the environment. But it's a recent win for me to have a poem. It was really cool when I had 2 poems accepted and nothing published yet.
Yeah.
How do I explain this? So these poems were submitted back in the summer of 2021. I think in August I made a couple of submissions. One of them was to QWERTY, and in April I'll have a publication in this Alberta publication, this magazine called Freefall, and it's an environmental themed issue, and I have 3 poems coming out in that. It's a series of 3 poems, and it's not typical for me to have multiple pieces of work coming out at once.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cool new experience for me. Usually it's one piece at a time, with months, or even in my recent experience it's been a year between publications. Yeah. So Free Fall, keep an eye out for that.
Yeah.
Series of 3 poems, environmental themed. Really excited about it. I think they're quite good. And the series, it wasn't initially a series of poems. I didn't write it like part 1 or part 2 or part 3, but I had these 3 different poems with lots of space in between writing them. And then I was like, oh, these actually kind of fit together, and they actually do tell a story when they're placed in this order. So I'm going to submit them as a series. And they got in.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm going to cut you off because I really got to pee.
Go ahead.
But
Fill your boots.
1 minute left, so I'm going to just cut the cameras and I'll be right back.
Totally. Do you mind if I water this?
Yes,
Is
you
it
can
a
water
good
it.
time to do it now?
Yep.
Okay.
Should I stick him in the soil?
You can, yeah. Is he in there now?
Yep.
Okay. How much do you usually give him?
Not too much. A little bit.
Like that?
Yeah, that's
A
probably
little
pretty
city
good.
sip?
Yep.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it might have been a little bit since I've watered him, so this will be good for him.
Yeah. We all need just a little bit more water. Full circle moment right there.
Yep.
You mentioned, was I making a point? Were we talking about something moments ago? We don't have, as far as loose ends go.
I'm not sure. I really was just focusing on not trying to pee my pants. I had to pee really bad.
Pat on the back for everyone holding in their pee right now. Good job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're on a drive right now and you have to really pee.
Yeah.
keep holding, baby. Keep holding.
You'll make it.
You'll make it.
We'll make it there together.
Oh.
Inspirational.
That is inspirational.
You mentioned journaling earlier.
Sorry.
That's quite all right. We're both just stretching out here. Do you journal?
I started to dabble into it.
My end question, what I'm trying to get towards, and I'll just jump there, is like, have you ever tried poetry?
Never.
Never. No interest?
No, that's... Don't be so negative, Spencer. Don't be
Okay.
so negative. Not that I don't have an interest. I just don't know if I can get in that headspace.
Yeah. What is that headspace like?
Well, like I said, I think there's rules to poetry, and you said there is no rules. And I feel like there is a way you got to follow to write through. I feel like you got to rhyme and you got to...
Oh, wow. Ooh,
make
wow.
it meaningful and in a sense, but sometimes it's not at all.
Yeah,
well, not necessarily, but
this is my confessional moment. I'm just not a fan of rhyme and poetry. I don't like it.
okay. No,
Yeah.
I see. I have no idea
Now,
about
there
poetry.
are some poems that rhyme and they do that well. I going back to language, I feel like a rhyme scheme can sometimes be a little bit constricting as far as what I want to say doesn't rhyme with what I've just said.
Mm-hmm.
So now I have to box what I want. Now I have to box what I'm trying to say into this rhyme scheme. I don't think poetry. Someone wrote a tweet that I saw recently. That's it's only poetry if it rhymes. It was just a very provocative tweet, and that's not at all the case. My poem did not rhyme. Can I ask you, putting you on the spot?
Sure.
And I won't be offended. What did you think of my poem? Were you listening?
I was listening.
Yeah.
I should have asked me right when you read it to me.
As I'm reading, I go through this trance where it's I can't think of anything else besides what I'm reading on the page right now, and if I do, I'm terrified that I'm going to say it into the mic.
I guess I was more just trying to follow it. I understood it. To a sense.
Yeah. It's about my father. So I had to get his permission before I published it. I got the acceptance, and I was like, "Hey, Dad,
I wrote this.
Cool thing. I wrote this. You're in it. Is it okay if I say yes?" And he was like, "Well, let me read it." And so I read it to him. My parents do not understand this poem. This is I think it's quite straightforward, but yes, they have trouble reading the work. It's on page 13.
Page 13.
Yeah, you were so yeah. It doesn't rhyme.
No.
I gave a little intro to it earlier where I said it's kind of like the early days of the pandemic. For me, it's like a time capsule of between March and June. My family would wake up with I'd do my studies, and then we would play cards as a family.
I was wondering what it's what we do. Offer things. Ice becomes water. Pills to dogs. Flame, smoke. Poems to hernias.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't understand that completely.
Yeah, I think So that's the last stanza, and what it's really supposed to do is kind of
Sum it all up.
conclude
Yeah.
what comes early in the poem,
That makes sense.
as far as like the poem's about my dad going in for his hernia operation, which he did in the early months of the pandemic, but it's also about the makeup of our home in those first few months with that big disruption that the pandemic brought on.
So is this poem strictly between a certain time frame? Or are you trying to dabble into a bigger picture while you're writing it as well?
I think it's a time capsule. I think it's a little bit of a portrait of those first few months. That, like, the dog's in there, and you know,
that's a big part of your life.
it's a big part of my life, and also like we're talking about health throughout the poem.
Yep.
As far as like we're talking about my dad's health with his hernia, and we're talking about the dog's health because she's taking pills with bananas or something.
Yeah.
Like and there's food assistance. It's a bit of a political poem a little bit, because the first stanza mentions food assistance programs.
Yep.
Which I remember was an argument going on at the time. I was listening to CBC and they were doing stories on, like, I don't know, there was some debate of like, we shouldn't be spending money giving kids. This is very reductive. So maybe it's not accurate.
Is this is the wrong approach? When I read a poem, it's really hard for me to read in between the lines and break it down. Is that not always the case for poetry?
I think.
Or is that kind of what you should do with poetry?
I think however you read poetry is however you
Yeah,
read
there's
poetry.
no rule. Like, there is no rule.
If you read a poem and it's good to you, then great, you've read the poem.
Is there another one that you like in this book?
It's a prose piece. I don't know what page it's on. The last name, it's in the table of contents. Last name is like Priest or Pierce.
Prose.
And
Callan Priest.
Woman.
49.
It's a prose piece, which means it's like 2 or 3 pages. It's all, I think, one sentence.
Oh, wow.
Something as well that Lucy Ellman does in her book.
Yeah, that is very long. I was gonna read it, but no.
It would be hard to read out loud, I'm sure, to perform. But I think it's
a long read. It looks fairly simple, just scanning through it.
Yeah, I really like that piece.
I came home and I thought about taking estrogen. And then we're not getting into that.
Yeah. I don't have permission from Kaylin to read their piece.
That's enough reading for me.
I did really, aside from my own piece, which is in this book, which I have a bias towards, I really liked that, whether, is it called Women or Woman? Singular? Woman?
Woman.
Yeah, by Kaylin Pierce.
Wait, didn't you just say woman? Woman?
Woman. With an A, it's singular, and with an E, it's plural.
Oh, one man.
Yeah.
Woman.
Yeah. So as far as an approach to poetry, if you read a poem and you enjoy it, then that's got to be the right way. I think as far as like looking in between lines or just sticking to what's on the page.
Yeah, I guess if it gives you a sense of meaning or I don't know.
Meaning, that's good. That's one way of doing it.
I don't.
The last stanza of my poem is meant to bring everything that came before it together. It's kind of like a little bit of a mishmash whirlpool of like stanza number 1. Stanza is kind of like if you're a poetry beginner, writing is like, if you write prose, if you write just like a book or an article, you write in paragraphs, and a stanza is kind of like a paragraph in poetry. It's like section 1, line break or stanza break. Section 2. This is all very reductive, but this is my poetry intro course.
Start taking notes.
Yeah, my masterclass. Welcome.
Yeah.
So like, there's an image I think that's described in section 1, and then there's an image described in stanza number 2 and number 3, and those are all my reading of my poem. And I don't think my reading is the single one correct one. I think whatever people take away from this poem is what I take away, and that's cool. And I love to hear other people's interpretations of it. Stanza 1 presents an image, stanza 2, and then the last stanza ties them all together. So it's what we do, offer things. I think it's one of the human things to do is like we give things. There's no reason that I should be like, I love my dog.
Yeah.
Why am I looking after her health? Why have I invited her into my home? Why do I have her? When she doesn't do anything for me besides being I like her. This now I hope it'll come off as sound like a dog hater. But
Well, you wouldn't have a dog if you were a dog.
yeah,
hater.
exactly. But like purpose wise, why do I have her? She fills me up. I love her. And I think other elements of that poem as well. It's like it's what we do offer things. I don't have the last stanza memorized, but like pills to dogs, flame becomes smoke, like this act of things moving into other things. And also looking at that through the lens of the pandemic of like, this is how things are right now, and it's gonna be okay if/when things eventually inevitably do change. And being okay with that transition.
I have a question.
Shoot.
The way people write,
Yeah.
as an individual, do you think the way they write is the way they think?
I think it is an expression of thought.
Because the way you
Yes.
wrote that poetry, I feel like it represents the way you kind of think at the same time. Like, you kind of think about a bunch of different situations, and then at the end, you kind of come up with, like, the conclusion of
These
trying
things
to
are
wrap it
actually
up.
all connected.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Does that make sense? Because, like, let
Yeah.
me use Jordan Peterson for an example. He takes a bunch of different stories or examples, and then he combines it back to what he was talking about. Like, he starts off with this idea or situation, then he says a bunch of stories of it, and I noticed through his book, that's kind of how he speaks as well. He'll, like, briefly touch on what he's talking about,
Yeah.
then he'll give a bunch of different examples, and then he'll come back and he'll explain how it's...
It might be an express. Yeah.
I don't know.
I haven't read Peterson, so I have that limitation on me. But I also want to draw our attention, like that can also be a really problematic way. Like, yeah, we can think this way, but like it's a very mathematical approach, I think. Like if we have like 1 is 1, and then we're gonna move on to and 2 and 2. If we add these things, then it's gonna give us 3. But there might not be any. This is talking so abstractedly. There might not be any connection between 1 and 2. So the 3 that we conclude at might not be
anything corresponding with those two.
Yeah, might be like a false conclusion. I think the term is a soliloquism. Solipsism. No, that's not it. I've shut my phone off, so I can't look up a definition. But there's
Let me search it up. I'm interested.
Look
I'm
up,
gonna every video I throw up like certain definitions
what's a
of
new
stuff.
word? There's it's
What is it? Solipsism?
Solipsism, I think, is a emotion. It's not the one that I'm looking for right now. I think soliloquy. It's the definition that I'm looking for is a bad way of thinking. Thinking that A means A and B means B, therefore C must mean C. But really, that doesn't have to necessarily be the case. In some contexts, it is.
It just said discouragement, cynicism, chip on one's shoulder.
No.
It just said bad way of thinking synonym.
It's a type of bad logic. Can you look up the word for bad logic? It's not solipsism.
Bad logic synonym.
Yeah, it starts with an S. It's
preposterous, unsound, absurd.
Ooh, no. Like a formal type of logic.
I know.
Not solipsism, not soliloquy, what is a soliloquy? Can you look up soliloquy?
How do you spell that?
I'm going to butcher it. SOLLIQUOY. I'm sure that's not how you spell it, but maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
UY. An act of speaking one's thoughts aloud when by oneself or regarding of any hearers, especially by a character in a play.
Yeah, I was thinking it's like it's a performance piece. No, those aren't the words I'm looking for. Do you mind if I dabble around on your phone?
Go ahead.
Look for this. Look for this word. My thinking is I'll arrive at it. Fault. I'm gonna look up types of faulty logic.
Types of faulty logic.
Faulty arguments like ad hominem, etc. Faulty logic. Ad hominem, strawman, appeal, slippery slope. I think it's this type of thing. What are we talking about? We're talking about in the context of Jordan Peterson as well. I'm going to X out of that advertisement. Hope you weren't looking for that.
I guess my question was just like...
We're going to abandon that word and I'll think of it much later.
I was just wondering if the way people write is the way they also think.
Yes, I am gonna say it's part of that.
Yeah.
I think it's so it's not just how we think; it's also how Peterson is trying to get others to agree with him.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I can pack like it might not just be the way he thinks. He might think certain things and write that down, and then it's complete gibberish.
Sorry,
But
and
he's
the way
like-
they speak, I guess I was
Yeah.
getting at too, is like the way they
Well,
write, the
yeah.
way they speak. And
Speak is that's when we bring the social function or construct of language. It's like I'm not just gonna write how like I'm not just gonna write what I think. I'm gonna write in ways that you can understand me
Mhm.
or try to convince you of a particular argument. Yeah.
Crazy.
Wild.
Do you want to end it here?
We can. Are there any loose ends that were? I feel like I really wish I had left more time for you to speak.
That is completely all right.
What are your
I'm more
thoughts?
trying to learn from you.
So you've never written a poem?
Never written a poem. Dabbled in a little bit of writing.
Journaling.
I will tell you after the podcast. I won't
Sure.
speak on to the podcast what
Off the record.
what I'm doing, and it has to do with writing. So
Okay.
I will talk to you in a bit.
Little sneak peek.
Yeah.
Little Easter egg there.
Little
Cool.
Easter egg. It's just something that the crowd doesn't need to know about yet. But
Oh, yet. Stay tuned, folks.
I'm talking like 60 years. Like
60 years.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, like
Stay real tuned.
Yeah.
Stay soft.
Stay tuned, guys. For
Yeah.
something
It's gonna be big.
long
It's gonna be
future.
big.
Oh, it's gonna be massive. No,
Yeah.
I'll talk about it, but
We can end it here. Yeah, we can end it here.
is that okay?
I
Unless there's
love
something
the
that you
idea.
wanna. Okay.
As far as plugs go,
As far as plugs, what do you? First, I'll
you can
plug
buy
this
you
book.
can buy QWERTY. It's on the UNB QWERTY website. $10 for this lovely issue.
Yeah. And page 13 may be the best one, right?
I also like yes, there are lots of good pages in this issue.
People can just screenshot that and then.
We like to what's the word? We like to support local.
Yeah.
So if you're not gonna buy QWERTY, go buy your own local magazine and
Yeah.
support them.
Some people are local listening, so. if you
Perfect.
wanna- And if you're not local, you can.
What are you doing here?
Can you order it?
Yeah, you can order QWERTY online. Yes.
Cool. Also, do you want to shout out your Instagram or Facebook or anything like
My Instagram's private, so I might not add you. You can send me an invite and I'll consider it. But Twitter is public, so if you want to find me, you can find me on Twitter. And sometimes I tweet good things. One good thing. Wow, this is a joke.
What is your name on Twitter first?
I think it's simply Folkins Spencer. I think it's all one word.
Falcon Spencer.
Folkins Spencer.
Okay.
I'm gonna end with my favorite tweet that I've ever done, and if this appeals to you, maybe you'll follow me. It has to do with we're going back to grid and we're going back to Quest for the Good Life. I read The Odyssey by Homer. This is a joke that only people who have read The Odyssey by Homer, or if you're familiar with it, will understand. Which is maybe a terrible way to end this episode.
It's okay.
But we're gonna do it anyway. For Penelope, Odysseus's return is a looming issue. And it's a very funny joke if you've read the book. Do you want me? It's even funnier if I explain the joke. That's how jokes work, right? You have to explain them.
Sometimes it's funny when you don't understand the joke. Yeah, explain
I
it.
can explain it very quickly. So
We got
Homer,
11 minutes, so
11 minutes, perfect.
we actually
I'll
have all the
take
time in the
12
world.
of them.
We have like
No
hours
worries.
if you want, but
So Homer wrote two very famous. They're not plays. They're epic poems. They're long poems, basically novels almost. One of them was the Iliad. That's the first one, and then the Odyssey. The Odyssey is the Odyssey is, put briefly, about a warrior, a soldier, coming home. He has a wife, Penelope, and she's been home for 20 years waiting for her husband to return from war. And she has these suitors, or these people who want to be her husband. And they're like in their kingdom. This is such a long explanation for this joke. Anyways, she makes them wait. She says, "Now I'm not ready to take a new suitor until I'm done this what do you call that? This what do you weave? You weave a tapestry. Tapestry? Yeah. I'm not ready to take a new suitor until I'm done weaving this tapestry." And so on a loom, that's the equipment that you use to make this tapestry. each morning she makes it, and then at night when everyone's asleep, she unravels it. So like she's waiting for her husband to return from war, and she's constantly postponing the conclusion, the finishing of this tapestry that she's weaving. So when I say for Penelope, Odysseus' return is a looming issue, looming having those two meanings of like it is imposed, it's imposing, it's looming over her. It's also she's literally on a loom waiting for Odysseus to come back.
Okay.
It's really funny. I promise. I think it got like maybe 2 retweets, and that's just like really good for me.
Nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Mon plaisir.
You're amazing. And yeah, why not have a part 2 sometime, hey?
I would just be so down for that. I have suggested maybe this is a bit of my brainchild. I'm not going to take any credit for it at all. Mitch and I have gone on several. We did not talk about any of the hikes we've gone on.
I know.
And I thought we might have. Which is just, yeah. I always joked like, oh, this could be a podcast, like our car trips or our hikes. Such interesting conversations we get into.
Hikes would be very difficult because you separate and then you sometimes we're talking for a little bit and then we'll branch off and then you'll end up talking to somebody else.
And a lot of silence, maybe. Yeah. But the car rides.
I
remember
would be good.
Specifically, we went to Halifax this past summer, went surfing.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think in the first 5 minutes I was like, hello guys, I'm going to record this for a podcast. Didn't. And then like half an hour in I was like, wow, I really should have recorded this conversation. This would have been great. This is like just like
when everybody's engaged and it's just like the conversation's flowing, it's kind of amazing, isn't it?
Maybe in the future of the Absolute Podcast, you'll take this on the road.
You know what you should do? And my brother and his friends did this. Is you would just hit record on your phone without anybody knowing, and it's the best way to be.
It's legal.
It's legal.
It's legally permissible in court as long as in Canada, as long as you inform somebody else about it. Doesn't have to be necessarily the conversation partner.
What about after the fact?
How do you mean?
Inform them.
I don't know about the legality of that. That's a lesson that I learned in my first year journalism course with Jan Wong. It's a little bit controversial, but yeah. Mm-hmm. So for example, if we weren't in the context of this podcast and me and you were just having a conversation, as long as I told someone else, doesn't have to have any relation to you, I'm going to record this conversation, then we could have a conversation, and then if I wanted to use it against you later in court, it'd be legally permissible.
Nice.
I'm also not a lawyer, so don't take any legal advice from me, but I just think that's a fun little tidbit that I learned in my first few years of university from Jan Wong, who is a fantastic journalist and controversial in some very interesting ways.
Mm-hmm. But if you're with your friends and there's somewhat normal to not rat you out in a situation like that,
maybe you can make your own podcast. I think it'd be a very fun if that's the idea we were going for. Yeah, it'd be a fun experiment to do. So well done for creating this.
We got 6 more minutes. Let's get more personal with Spencer. Dream place to go hiking.
Oh wow, I always go to Mount Carlton. I've returned to it every year since I think 2015 or 2016. And can I allude to this?
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I wasn't sure if it was an unspoken thing. At Mount Carlton, I tip my head back against a window pane, and I sign my name underneath the window pane. So people usually sign their names like here at what might be eye level, but by twisting your head, I've signed my name 2015, 16, 17, 18. I'm just like slashed each date. I love Mount Carlton. I go once a summer, I think.
Yeah, I'd like to go this summer again.
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
I'll be there.
Living just up there.
Be camped up. I really want to do this summer the Fun Day footpath. I've never done it.
Wow.
Have you?
No,
Yeah, it's so, why not? We are right there.
I know, it's so close.
We're at the gateway, so.
My friend and I were talking about doing it very leisurely, so going very slow. And
my dad did it over the course of 20 years. He did a little bit this weekend, a little bit that weekend.
Nice. Well, I just mean
really leisurely.
Yeah, that's extremely. Yeah. I just meant we might take 4 or 5 days doing it, so just really taking our time. But then we said that we want to do the second time by just going through it as fast as possible.
Yeah.
So not quite running. There are people that run it in
I've heard people
a day and a half or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
and they're just like very sore after it. I'm sure. I would do it. I think Google recommends 4 or 5 days. I think it's doable in 2 to 3 days.
Yes, it is.
But it just leisurely 4 or 5 days. That sounds sweet.
Mm-hmm.
What's your dream location?
Dream location?
Yeah.
I was looking up. I don't know. I guess I can't answer dream location quite. Like
I have a couple. Like,
anywhere's with beautiful big mountains that I can snowboard on is
I love a good lake. I just love. I love being in water.
I was looking up the other day the most beautiful road bike roads to bike on.
Yeah, trails.
Yeah, trails. Like actual roads though. So like there's like 30-mile roads and like 100-mile roads of just beautiful scenery and stuff. And I wanna at least do one soon. Yeah. But I'd love to do a few throughout the years of my life and go on big trips. But I think you need to train a little bit just so you can kind of withstand a day of riding.
I had a friend in university go across America. They're an American, on a bike, like last summer, I think, and it was very interesting.
What kind of bike did they use?
I have no idea. But they're very knowledgeable and very very cool, I think. Nice. It was like, wow, you went across. They started on one coast, ended up on the other, and over like April to July, they did the whole thing. Yeah,
you get like right now is probably the time to start. Yeah. Like 1st of April probably time to start, and then if you can finish up before October would be the kind of the best way to go. Have I
ever had you on the unicycle? Have you ever tried that?
No, but I'd love to try it.
We can try that sometime.
Yes.
I wouldn't go.
Please.
I'll
do it first try. No, I'm just kidding.
Great. It took me about 12 hours perhaps to learn if I was to like really condense it, but I did it over the course of. I was very slow. Maybe this is a conversation for our next podcast. I don't know how much time we have left.
We got 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Spencer unicycles sometimes, and he can go for a couple hours at a time, but not massive distances. I think I went a couple kilometers once.
Cool.
It was a lot of fun. It's a very zen mindfulness activity. As far as like I can't really concentrate on much else. I'm just focused on keeping my balance.
Well, you gotta have those things, right?
Yeah. Oh, very much so. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, pleasure. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
You're an amazing guest.
Yeah. You're an amazing host.
You think so?
Yeah. That's what I've had all day. Okay.
Best ever.
Best ever. This is my first. Actually, in our last minute, this is it was my New Year's resolution last year to be a guest on a podcast. So thanks for
I think
helping me achieve
you
that
did
dream.
tell me that in a
earlier conversation.
Yeah. So
well, I'm very thankful to now have completed last year's New Year's resolution.
I'm glad I got your a check mark on your bucket list.
Right there.
That's amazing. No, I'd love to try the unicycle, and
we will make that happen. Yes. I was gonna bring it today, but it snowed.
And I will tell you another thing. So I have 2 things after this podcast. So I will see you later, Spencer. This was amazing. Thank you. And
muchas gracias.
You're amazing. So
you as
and follow him on Twitter at Folkins Spencer, and keep up with his jokes.
Thanks.